The Halloween season continues on Lucha Review, and since we're in the middle of the pandemic, what finer opponent could we pick than Capcom's Resident Evil, the survivor horror game that defined a generation? We are gonna take on three of Capcom's best in a gauntlet match to the death. We're going to start out with Resident Evil 0 on PS4. We're going to take on the remake of Resident Evil 2 on PS4. And, as you might have guessed, on PS4, we're going to take on my personal favorite Resident Evil game, the remake of Resident Evil 3. So tag yourselves in, my luchadors. It's going to be a long night as we take on the undead, nerdy, and the dirty.
Keeping up with the Halloween festivities, and since I already covered my love of Castlevania last month, this week's episode takes a look at Resident Evil 0 along with the remakes of Resident Evil 2 and 3. Hey, aren't we missing something? No, we're not. 1996's Resident Evil, for me, is easily the worst game in the series. The voice acting was atrocious, the camera angles were garbage, and the controls were slow and disorienting. I worked in a Blockbuster Video when it first came out, and me and the guys played it for no more than 10 minutes on a slow Sunday afternoon. We preferred to rewind the VHS tape sitting in the return bin. Resident Evil 0 retains nearly everything that made the original so hard to enjoy. The lousy controls are modernized to keep up with, literally every other video game in the market in 2002, the time of its release. They're still a little awkward, but not unplayable. The voice acting has improved while the environments are beautiful, but the camera angles remain terrible as they create a multitude of blind spots. Oh, and the pace of the game is continuously slowed down by having to open doors or traverse stairs with a first-person perspective. Resident Evil 0 takes place before the mansion incident, quote-unquote, otherwise known as Resident Evil 1. You play the role of Rebecca, a STARS member assisting in the relocation of Billy the violent criminal. Rather than transporting the prisoner privately, the Raccoon City Police Department brings him onto a train occupied by civilians, and the train is attacked by a swarm of these nasty little mutant leeches. The leeches infect everyone on the train, and because the controls are still somewhat awkward, I'm dead within 90 seconds. For Resident Evil 0, I had zero shame in trying again on easy, because history has proven time and time again that the developers at Capcom are fucking sadists. My second attempt was more successful, but because of how horrible these camera angles are, I struggled a bit in getting rid of those fucking dogs that have become a bigger Resident Evil staple than the zombies themselves. I survived the attack, met Billy the violent criminal, and even when he's already scheduled to be executed for 23 murders, Rebecca refrains from blowing his fucking brains out and becomes his friend. 1 minute into the story, I learned the game has a tag team function that allows the player to switch between characters, and the character you're not actively playing is controlled by artificial intelligence. I'm already rolling my eyes at this point because I already know that any character roaming around freely is going to get into some kind of trouble. Soon after, the characters are separated, and I'm rolling my eyes again, because they'll need to rely on this dumbwaiter to pass items back and forth. You know this is going to lead to tedious work. Rebecca gets locked in the pantry, so she'll need to rely on Billy to get her out. The doorway barring her in can be opened with the use of a sharp object, as per the game's instructions. Billy's supposed to be a criminal. Maybe he has a knife? He does! Okay, great. Let's pass the knife up to Rebecca and get her the fuck out of there. Wait, what? The item is too big? Look at the size of this dumbwaiter. You could fit a fucking pumpkin in there. Is Billy carrying a knife or a fucking claymore? Okay, no knife for Rebecca, but there is a random key sitting around, so let's use the dumbwaiter and pass it on to Billy. Maybe he'll find a use for it. There we are. Okay, so, as Billy, I make my way to the other end of the train, kill off whatever's left of those fucking demon dogs that I couldn't see because of the game's many blind spots, and I make my way into the captain's quarters. A journal entry on the floor explains how the contents of his satchel will help me along my quest, so let's see what he's got. Ah, fuck. Billy doesn't know how to mix herbs to make medicines, and I don't want to discard any items just to make room for the satchel. So that means that I have to go all the way back to the other end of the train, Sit and wait for every single door to be opened in a first-person view. Use the dumbwaiter to send the herbs up to Rebecca. Tag over to Rebecca to collect and mix the herbs. Tag back out to Billy. Walk Billy all the way back to the captain's quarters. Grab the satchel and see that I can't open it just yet because you need 2 keys. I only paid $5 to get this game in a PS4 flash sale, and I think I can safely say that I got my money's worth. Resident Evil 0 surely is a step from Resident Evil 1, but I have zero interest in playing this jobber any further. Any attempt I made in trying to enjoy this game was crushed by its shaky controls, its blind spots, and having the adrenaline sucked right out of me whenever I had to do something as simple as open a fucking door. Even if I were to tough it out, it is still a prequel, and in my experiences with prequels, I've been taught not to expect much. Because, after all, I already know how the story has to end, and that eliminates any twists, turns, or pleasant surprises. I don't care how much heat I get for saying this. Resident Evil 3 is my favorite game in the series, and it's because of how much I love the Nemesis character. He's the Jason to Capcom's Friday the 13th. He's the Michael Myers to Capcom's Halloween. He's menacing. He's grotesque. He has purpose. He's the boogeyman, out to get you specifically. He's the iconic, signature monster that embodies the horror and terror that make Resident Evil games what they are. And when the remake of Resident Evil 3 was due to release at the start of California's pandemic lockdown, it made that much more sense for me to play it right away. I was not disappointed. Resident Evil 3 starts out like a playable horror movie, like a Telltale game. But Capcom is aware that you want to get out there and start killing zombies, so the game allows the player to roam around freely just after enough of the story is unraveled. The remake contains a few nuances from the original, like the stubborn man who hides in the back of the truck, the donut shop, and the need to rely on a fire hose to make certain passages safe, but for the most part, the story and concepts from the original are all expanded upon, only with a few omissions. For example, the think-quick decisions you were prompted to make in the 1999 version were not carried over, nor was that giant electric eel that you had to kill as Carlos. Other improvements on the 1999 version include simplified controls that allow the player to draw weapons or run for cover depending on what the situation calls for. The over-the-shoulder camera angle really puts you in Jill's shoes, while most of the game's environments are dimly lit, creating a tense atmosphere with background music that makes you think there's danger around every corner. There are also a few Easter eggs thrown in to appease older players, like movie posters based on other famous Capcom games, and they all seem to say, "We care. Thank you so much for your loyalty to our products, even when they sucked." And the Nemesis is more menacing than ever. As Jill Valentine, you'll find yourself in perilous scenarios in which the Nemesis seems to have your number, and his intelligence seems higher than I remember it. His brute strength and weapons can easily fuck you up, and he's quick enough to dodge any shot fired from far off. You gotta get in close if you're gonna take this guy down, but if you can nail his weak point with the shotgun, it'll buy you enough time to escape. One thing I love about this remake is its do-it-yourself philosophy. The game came out in April of 2020, and it was released with no pre-order bonuses, nor was there any additional content you could buy or download. There might have been an option to unlock all in-game content for a few extra dollars, but I ignored it. I wanted the fun and the pride that came along with truly mastering the game, and earning its perks and rewards, just like how we did in the 90s. Is it the greatest Resident Evil game ever made? For me it is. It's a solid remake of a solid classic. It's not everyone's favorite, but it is still a champion, and it got me so excited to get back into Resident Evil games that I bought the remake of Resident Evil 2 a month later. Speaking of which, Resident Evil 2 is everyone's favorite, so I saved the best for last. More importantly though, chronologically, its story takes place a day after the events in Resident Evil 3, so I accidentally played the game in the story's correct order. Resident Evil 2 has enough replay value to make it the better of the two remakes, but the difficulty is fucking ridiculous. This game was designed to attack your pride. These zombies can take half a dozen bullets to the head before they go down, and your best resort is almost always to run. So, like I usually have to do with Capcom games, I set the difficulty to easy and made the rocket launcher my first priority. See how easy that was? Now we can have some fun. And have fun with it I did. Resident Evil 2 is tightly packed with all the tension, jump scares, and puzzles that loyal fans crave, and in this remake, additional characters and scenarios will expand upon the original story. Again, the story takes place after what happens in Resident Evil 3, but another reason to play 2 after 3 is because the Tyrant is more determined to kick your ass than the Nemesis will ever be. The Nemesis is tough, but once he's incapacitated, he's out of your hair for a while. The Tyrant, on the other hand, will not stop pursuing you. You could stop him in his tracks for sure, but if you don't know where to go or what to do to get out of the police station, then you'll eventually run out of bullets and you'll be at his mercy. Granted, there are certain areas he can't access, but those areas are typically dead ends, and he'll be waiting when you try to escape. This remake also contains more bonus content to either buy or earn, thus adding to its replay value. I particularly appreciated the costumes. You've got the freedom to see Claire and Leon as they looked in 1998, and you also have a nice selection of other skins. Playing the black and white version is especially a nice touch, as it gives the game the appearance of a Universal Studios monster movie classic from the 30s or 40s. All in all, this game is nothing less than a champion for Lucha Review. It's fun to play while it challenges the player on so many levels, and its replay value will keep you occupied for quite a while before you're done with it. Did you survive this gauntlet match of horrors to its end? Tell me about your favorite Resident Evil game in the comments below. Otherwise, thanks for tagging in, and I'll see you next week for Lucha Review's Halloween finale.